Okay, hi then guys, this is the Defense Article here, and I'm recording a video on a site which is actually completely new to me. It's called Natural Light Poker. So what I'm going to be doing is just recording 4 tables on this site. 4 tables on this site. It seems really soft so far. Sorry, 6 tables, not 4. And yeah, and hoping this gives you some good ideas about the way you should generally be playing poker, especially on this site. So we're defending Jack 7 off here, blind against blind. Basically, against a min raise, I would be folding basically no hands. Blind against blind, just because we're getting such good odds to continue. We're in position. Our hand plays well in position against the big blind's range. Our range plays well in position against a small blind's range. Here we're going to bet our range for a third of the pots. We expect people to overfold to C bets on this kind of board, and we can still represent the intention to get stacks in by the river in the 3-bet pots at 100 big blinds deep for a third pot. Using the smaller size allows us to have a wider value range, or value range in inverted commas, and basically what that means is we can use a really high betting frequency and effectively make more that way. King Deuce off is going to be a fold against a 3x, although we will be defending really wide. 7-4 is just about to fold. It's quite close though, because if the fish on the button was deeper than about 10 big blinds, we might well be choosing to continue there, because we should be doing really well in terms of implied odds. I'm sorry, I'm just going to need to close some of the programs while I record this, so I'm just going to pop into my task manager. That will be done. Yeah. So basically, when one is a fish in a pot, we can play a really wide range of speculative hands. So that's why were the fish deeper than about 10 big blinds, 7-4 suited is actually pretty close to a call. I still think it's a fold, considering fish tend to limp re-raise at some frequency, which we don't really want. Normally I would open Jack 7 off on a button with a fish in a big blind. Considering I think this fish is likely to reshove somewhat often, I'm just going to fold. Make that adjustment. Queen 10 off is going to be a pretty standard open and a cut off, especially considering the site seems really soft, and I expect I'd probably have a very significant edge in 10 and L games anyway. As a bit of background, I have been playing poker for about, gosh, it's going on. I started in about February 2012. And I currently mostly play 100 NL Zoom on Party. So these games are somewhat different to my usual games, but the principles are the same, and hopefully I'll be able to give you that's why I'm hoping to give you a really good background about how to play these games rather than just games generally. Again, I think it's really important on fish heavy sites that you do tag people whenever you see the second you see them do something fishy. So for instance, here with this Hyundak 777 player, we've seen him open limp, which basically no good player will ever do. Ace-high boards tend to be really bad for cold callers, so he will be c-betting. There is the option to basically c-bet 100% of your range through a third pot. I'm choosing not to do that here because I believe that players on this site will have somewhat more cold calls with ace-x suited and ace-x generally than they probably should have. We're still going to barrel because I think they're going to be peeling the flop with hearts, with small pairs, and having 2 overs to hands like 6s gives this hand, in particular King 10, quite a lot more equity than most 4 over bluffs, which is what we sort of want when deciding which hands to use to bluff. We are going to give up the river. Facing a call line, he's going to have a full house here extremely often. 6-3, we stabbed at the turn because we have equity and no showdown value, but we're just going to fold facing the raise, and against an 18 big blind shove we can call ace 9 suited on the button. Unfortunately, we run into kings. Maybe he is actually shoving much tighter than he should be there. In which case, ace nine suited. Ooh, nice suck up. Ace nine suited might be a bad call, but we need a strong read that that's actually the case before we do that. We limped to the bottom here with 7-6 offsuit, basically because we don't really want to jam 12 big blinds with it. We also don't want to raise and have to fold against a jam with it. So and it's a hand where we're in position, we expect to be able to be better than our opponent post flop. So I think limping is just going to make more sense. And we can't really get in a value bet with fourth pair here. Turning an open ender and still having a third pair, we're definitely not folding with jacks on the turn. And we can raise a river. We're going to be raise folding about. It should be pretty obvious that we have a strong range, so we don't want to make it a too big a size, because I don't think we would ever get called for a big size there. Flopping top two, we're just going to start by leading, considering we have no particular reason to think he's particularly aggressive so far. Yeah, a lot of the time we do face a bet call on that kind of board. We are going to be chopping, and that's fine. That's not a problem, because especially on a site where in games where it seems like lots of people are really bad. We're just going to be making. Oh wait, he didn't limp there, did he? We're just going to be doing so well by essentially looking for value from really awful calls from two pair, which enough of the player pool is going to make that this is going to be better to raise than it would be to simply call. Four-three off. We're obviously not going to play on the button. Getting 3.5 to 1, and we're probably going to call pre-flop. We don't want to get stacks in yet. This is one of the flops where we are kind of caught between call and fold facing a jam. But yeah, given our opponent is very passive post flop as well, we are able to realise our equity even with a call pre-flop, because we are very rarely going to have to fold the best hand. Generally, we can call wider when our opponent is going to be passive on future streets, because they're not going to make any money with their worst hands offers, by bluffing. So we can just fold against their bets, and most of the range of theirs that they see those future streets on, we're just going to realise our entire equity against those parts of their range. King 10 seems like a fairly easy fold against the 3 bets, especially considering I've got no good reason to think that this player is particularly aggressive. And here, we're just getting too good odds to fold Queen 10. Probably not planning to put any more money in the pot unless we hit, and we're gonna just check down. We've got a very close to dry side pot, so we don't really achieve anything by betting. We're going to fold even despite the ridiculously good odds we're getting, simply because we are not looking. We cannot hit anything good here, and it turns out we would have won the side pot. Oh no, we wouldn't. We would have won past the side pots. Checks on this board on 6-6-2 are generally going to be really weak, so we are going to attack that by betting small with a wide range, as we generally can against against weak ranges. King 10, we're going to check the turn again. This is mostly because it's 4-way. So we don't have that much fold equity. And we have enough showdown value and enough Oh gosh. We have enough showdown value and little enough fold equity that's checking the river with king 10 is just going to be better than betting. King queen, we're going to call and probably fold the river. I don't expect people to be going too wild with river bluffs here, with river bluffs on this site. It's an interesting river. One we might choose to bluff if we had a reason to believe he was a good player. Facing a jam, it's going to be an easy fold, basically because all of his bluffs got there. He can have a 8-9 or Jack-9. It's a tiny frequency, but it's certainly unclear whether he 3-bets him in the first place. So I think calling, hoping to see those when he has a ton of value hands there, is overly optimistic. In case you're wondering about opening ranges, generally in terms of PFR by position on soft sites, RFI by position, so that's the percentage range you would raise in each position. I would normally recommend on a soft site about 18% under the gun, about 21% in MP, about 29% in the cut-off, and about 50% on the bottom. Small blind's a bit weird. Generally regs in soft games massively overfold the big blind. I'm just going to call here with king queen. I'll finish my thought first. Generally regs massively overfold the big blind in soft games. And that really allows us to go nuts with our small blind opening range, because they should be really should be folding very little in the big blind. Against the 3x, the big blind should fold maybe 30% of the time, and either call or 3-bet the other 70%, which very few people do, which means you can go absolutely nuts in the in the small blind against the big blind, and just expect to win a lot of money by their pre-flop folds. Okay, so it turns out we probably shouldn't be bluffing too much, even against weak ranges, which I think makes sense. It's just seeing an ace-high call down. That's not something I'm used to in weak games. I'm used to sort of weak tight strategies. I think this ace-jack fold is quite an important point here. Cold call ranges, unless you have a good reason to do otherwise, your cold call ranges should generally be really tight. It's tough to make money by cold calling, except, I mean, you should be defending the big blind wide, but cold calling in position is not something you can make a lot of money doing, generally. Especially considering you'll normally be seeing flops 3-way or 4-way even, giving everyone behind you good odds to continue. Where, for instance, here in the big blind, I've obviously got really good odds to continue 9-6 suited pre-flop, so I've done that, which isn't exactly great for this player if he's been cold calling hands like ace jack offsuit, which play well heads up, but not so well. They don't play so well in multi-way pots. This is a board with more reads. I might just go nuts and basically third pot my range on against a miss c-bet on the flop, because again, low boards checking ranges from pre-flop raises tend to be really weak, because people want to bet hands like eights would be the obvious example on this board. They want to bet hands like that for protection. Aces, they want to get 3 streets. When I say for protection, I mean value / protection. Aces, they want to get 3 streets, and so their checking range just looks like some ace high and nothing else pretty much. Jack 10 I'm going to call down, just because I think some people will bet twice here with ace king quite often, and he might have some other bluffs too, but I'm not expecting to be good that often. because I think people seem to be really passive on this site. That is something of a surprise, actually. It's a pity I don't seem to be able to see what his hand was, because that could be useful information. We flopped bottom 2 here, blind against blind, and we're just going to try and get a decent amount of money in. Because people seem to be really loose passive on this site, that's an awful river. Obviously, in case you haven't noticed, a king now beats us. So basically, because people seem to be really loose passive on this site, we can go really thin for value, so we can raise and barrel off a value with 8-7 in this spot, except on a 3 river. And we're just going to check back, because we still beat some of his range. He might have missed nut flush draws, 9-10, but yeah, exactly. Although that would actually be a reasonable call down anyway. I would expect him to call that down. If he wasn't calling that down, I think that would be too tight. But generally, I would expect any king to call down there, and that is a problem. Earlier in the video, I saw this guy min raise the cutoff. Now I'm seeing him 3.5x the cutoff, which suggests he might be raising bigger with stronger hands. We do want a raising range on basically any flop. King Queen we can raise at some frequency. Generally, given it doesn't have much showdown value to check call, I would prefer a backdoor flush draw to raise. But certainly raising King Queen off at some frequency is also going to be fine. However, because I have this, or because I think I might have this read from him using a larger pre-flop raise size than previously, I think his range for reaching the flop might be a little bit stronger, and so I'm going to just call the flop with basically all my straight draw combos. River is a pretty easy value bet. We're going to be bet folding though. It would be a really weird line for him to use as a bluff, and basically we're just hoping that he calls with, say, Jack 9. Yeah, just going to fold here, especially against an overbet. Overbets in soft or micro stakes games are overwhelmingly strong. Without good reads otherwise. So yeah, just fold everything but the nuts against overbets without a good reason not to do so. King 8 we can just about value bet against a weak player on this flop. We can also bet it against some stronger players. But that's mostly, if we do bet King 8 against a stronger player here, it's mostly to keep some 8x in our flop betting range, so we're not screwed if we bet the flop and an 8 comes on the turn. So I would bet Ace 8 and King 8 at some frequency on this flop against strong players as well. King Jack against the largest C bet, I'm just going to fold. With a King of Spades I might be more inclined. I'm not sure. With the King of Spades I might be more inclined to peel the flop at least. But a fourth nuts backdoor flush draw is not a strong hand. 2 overs are pretty useful, mind, but against the larger C bet I just don't think we're getting good enough odds to continue. We're heads up on this bottom middle table, so hopefully we will get a decent amount of action from that. Uh, 7-5 again, pretty easy overcalling the big blind. We'll get some good odds. With the backdoor nut flush draw, I don't mind getting a bit more money in the pot, and I don't mind a fold either. Generally, I think that people will overfold to see bets heads up. So I'm just going to be betting a really high frequency heads up on flops. Facing this flop donk bet, I'm folding mostly because of the player behind. He's a pre-flop raiser, so he has all the overpairs in his range, and he tends to have a really strong range. So middle pair with no backdoors or anything isn't something I'm too keen on. And against the min bet, I'm getting 12-1. I don't need to be good very often. I don't expect to be good very often, but I do expect to be good often enough for this to be a call. especially because a lot of players use min bets as their bluff size. Again, ace jack off is a fold against the 3 bets out of position. It might be a call if we'd opened in the cutoff, but again, considering these games seem very passive, I think I would make an exploitative fold if we'd opened in the cutoff. A7 offsuit isn't in my normal cutoff opening range. I'm opening it because there are weak players in the blinds. So all of our range has more EV to open. Obviously, getting 3-bet with aces is pretty much a dream, and we're going to make a fairly large 4-bet because when someone min 3-bets, they're very rarely a good player. So we expect to be able to realise a decent chunk of equity against them. And I expect him to be seeing the flop with quite a wide range. So while this would be a not great board for aces in a 4-bet pot against a strong player, I'm just expecting him to have all kinds of 2 Broadway hands. Yeah, and we're just going to try and manipulate the pot size, better size, which I don't think he will ever fold a hand like Queen Jack against, but still leave him with little enough left on the river that he's just going to say, right, lol pot odds, I call on that river. That's a really bad river. I think I will have to be checked this. Ugh. Yeah, I think this. You see, the irony is, after saying what I said on the turn, I'm strongly tempted to make a low pot odds call here. Oh, dearie me. I think I can just about fold. I think the thing is very. Oh, goodness me, he bluffed. Nice hand, sir. Nice hand. Yeah. So I think that's generally a fine fold because without reads, I'm not going to make a note on that actually because I won't be on this site very much. Without reads that people are going to bluff, generally the best assumption is that they aren't bluffing in weak passive games like these. 8-7 suited I should probably be folding pre-flop, again because they're weak passive games. People don't have 3-bet ranges which are as wide as they should be. So I don't have the opportunities to win the pot post flop that I would against someone with an appropriately wide pre-flop range. King 3-4 is great for my range. Against a check, I would just be c-betting 100% and expecting that to be the most profitable. But on, say, that would be different on a board like 10-8-5. While I might be betting Jack 9 specifically there, that would be a board which is slightly better for the big blinds range compared to the buttons in that spot. So you can't just go nuts on it as the button, I should say. I believe people will overfold to c-bet, so this ace-7 with a backdoor flush draw might be a check call sometimes in tougher games. But I'm just going to use a really high c-bet frequency because I expect people to fold too much. Ace-queen, I'm just going to try and get to showdown here. It's good often enough that we can happily get to showdown. Against this bet, I think I'm going to fold. It's pretty close. Especially given we block some of the hands that he can be value betting there, like King Queen, Ace King if he's been a bit of a net pre. But it's far from ideal, let's just say that. Because again, these are passive games, so we don't want to be going nuts. Rivering the Queen, we can value bet small and expect to get called by a 10 pretty often. And on this river, like when we have 7 high, we need on the river, we need a good reason not to bluff. So considering we might get him to fold a 4 somewhat often, I'm pretty happy just to bluff there. I mean, with this size, we need it to work a very small percentage of the time as well, which works in our favour. Yeah, I don't think him calling Queen 8 necessarily is problematic as regards the profitability of that bluff. Facing a double barrel on this board, I'm actually going to call again. I think people are going to value bet far too tight on this turn, so I think I'm doing quite well. That's a really bad river though. A lot of his bluffs got there. And I guess that's obviously one of the downsides of check calling twice with third pair there. People can hit a lot of river cards, and especially if they're going to continue bluffing when they haven't hit, you're going to be really tough pressed to realise any equity against their bluffs either. This Chucky Egg bloke seems extremely aggressive so far. He's on a number of my tables. I suspect he's an aggressive reg, so I'm going to be calling pre-flop, whereas against most players I'd just be folding ace-10 suited there. Most players on this size, I should say. And again, we're expanding our opening range in the cutoff because of the weaker player in the big blind. Against that size, I can call the flop. It's kind of marginal three-way, I should say, but I think it's fine to call. This is a turn which is very good for our range. In a game where I thought people were thinking lots about ranges, I would develop a donkey range on this turn. As played, I think just check folding, as things are on this size, I think just check folding is going to be the best play. Because I expect people to bet flush draws mostly earlier, I think ace-king becomes quite an easy value bet on this river. I don't on the bottom left. I don't expect our opponent to fold better than Queen High very often, so I'm just going to give up. I don't expect him to have worse than Queen High very often either, but I just don't expect to realise the requisite fold equity for bluffing to be good. Again, very easy to defend blind against blind, ace 5 offsuits. Because this Chucky Egg guy seems extremely aggressive, we're going to make a slightly loose 3-bet in big blind against cutoff with King Jack suited. Turning a gut shot, we can do somewhat okay if with a combination of fold equity and pot equity. Like even hitting a jack on this board is going to be good for us quite often after the flop goes check check. So I think that's going to be fine. Yeah, people tend to fold a lot on 4 straight boards, so you can bluff those a lot. And obviously ace high there has a gut shot, which is nice. In terms of providing us some equity for our bluff, which we don't have with many hands on that board. King Jack, I'd be third potting my range against a regular here on this board. Against a weak player, I think King Jack does better by checking back the flop and then making finish value bets on the turn river. Because my impression of the super red guy is that he doesn't bluff, I'm not going to be checking to see if I can get him to bluff 1 diamond hands. Instead, I'm going to be trying to get him to call with worse kings on the river. Aces is quite close between checking and betting. Because people seem extremely stationary, I'm going to bet fold about 170 here. This particular big blind is folded a lot against my small blind opens, so I'm going to be raising, I think raising Queen 7 offsuit is going to be fine there against him. Despite the fact he's passive, we can't really fold third pair when it's so high in our range, and we just have an easy check back on the river. Don't expect to get him to fold any better hands or get him to call with many worse. A6 is an easy flop and turn call on this board. River on this particular river, I think it's a check fold, especially given 7-9 gets there, and he might be capable of value betting thin with 10-9 or something here as well. Plus, again, I would assume generally, without good reason to think otherwise, that people don't run triple barrel bluffs. Against a check on this river, we actually have very few worse hands in our range, so I think I can get him to fold a lot of better hands, considering he seems somewhat tight passive-ish. I think that makes bluffing A7 a better play than checking back. I don't think we have that much showdown value. That's unfortunate. A lot of people would be reticent about value betting tens on this turn, but he has very few Queen X in his range for check calling 9-6-4. So not only is tens almost always still better, but it's going to be much easier on a draw heavy board to get value on the turn than this is on the river. And it's also good if we get hands like 9-7 to fold. Like 10-8 to fold. Just hands which probably aren't going to bluff the river, but do have some equity against us. A snap raise on this board when we don't have the top of our range, I'm just going to fold against. And assume he just has a good hand, considering he seems extremely tight passive so far. Okay, that is going to be the end of this video. I am going to record another part, so thanks guys, I'll be back in a moment, or in a week, probably for you. I don't know how often these are going to be published.